Hello and welcome to the Road to Reinforce. I'm Dan Webb, Director of Global Technology Alliances with Alert Logic, and in our first episode I welcome our Chief Marketing Officer, Matt Selheimer. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Dan. Nice to see you.
Yeah,
nice
you
to
too.
be here.
Yeah, thank you for taking part here. So, Matt, let's jump straight into it.
Sure.
25th of June sees AWS enter the security conference landscape, bringing with them a reputation for disruption, innovation, challenging the norms. What are you expecting to see from them at the show?
Yeah, a couple things, Dan. Great question. First thing is, I think AWS does a really fantastic job of their conferences of making them real, making them practical. A number of cybersecurity conferences over the years have gotten a little over the top, shall we say. And I think AWS is really going to bring a lot of practical guidance to their customers. The second thing I would say is, we've got sort of multiple classes of cloud adopters. We've got people who've been in the cloud for quite some time, and they're looking to, how do I improve the security of my cloud environments? And then we've got other classes of folks that are still just getting into the cloud and maybe even still a little bit nervous about security in the cloud. So I think speaking to both of those audiences and really helping both of them feel comfortable with running production workloads in the cloud and continuing to invest in running their business in the cloud is going to be a key theme for the conference.
So Matt, I wanted to pick up on one of the points that you raised there around the status quo of the security conference industry. Having actively participated in a couple of the major shows myself over the last few months, it's safe to say that we're in a situation where some corners of the industry have started to question the value of these conferences. They tend to be at opposite ends of the scale, so either very kind of vendor-heavy conferences with lots of conflicting messaging and folks dressed as Game of Thrones characters walking around trying to get your attention, or right to the other end where it's very much focused on the practitioners and tends to be heavy on FUD and lots of concerns around hacks and bad actors and really kind of spreading fear.
Yeah.
So how do you see the AWS Reinforce conference challenging that and coming at it from a different angle?
Yeah, so like I said, I think AWS does a really good job of being very practical and pragmatic and having sessions that are real world that individuals can apply when they get back to their offices, and I've seen the same evolution in the security conference market that you've seen as well. There was seemed like buzzword bingo from a lot of companies at RSA this year, where you sort of reach into a bowl and grab out 3 buzzwords, stitch them together, and put it up on your stand, on your booth, and that was their message. And I think that. The market doesn't need more of that. The market needs less of that. And I enjoy a good party and having a good time like anybody else, but there were vendors that were spending money on having Pitbull perform and Paris Hilton DJing and things like that. And wouldn't it be better to take that budget and those resources and put it into things that can actually practically help customers improve their cybersecurity posture? So I'm expecting that AWS is going to bring that same level of real-world pragmatism that I've seen at their other conferences to the security market with the Reinforce event.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think it's safe to say that Paris Hilton's security credentials probably aren't where they should be.
She's not a CISSP?
I don't believe so, but we should probably check that. Pitbull might be. I think he's probably more likely out of the two. So with that, something we've seen with the other AWS events is a heavy focus on the customer, and often the the subject matter expertise is framed in the voice of the customer. Yeah. Do you expect to see more of the same at AWS Reinforce?
I do. Yeah, I think that's one of the real strengths of AWS conferences is they really put customers out in front and have them share their experiences, not just the good experiences, but where they've maybe had some challenges, right? And it's all about the community, and how can the community support one another? How can we leverage the power of the cloud, the hyperscale, the efficiency the cloud brings, and make sure that we're able to simultaneously protect our data and protect our workloads as well.
That's a good point. I think community is an interesting topic. I mean, the security industry as a whole has been challenged on that front for some time. We often hear customers' frustrations around the lack of interaction between vendors and platform providers, and generally a sense that there's not enough kind of intelligence sharing and collaboration going on. AWS have done a good job of breaking down some of those barriers, I think, and they've really kind of managed to get the industry to rally around solving the challenges of their customers. So do you think this will be a real kind of coming out party for that more collaborative approach to security from the industry?
I hope so. I think many security vendors that are out there have taken a very narrow approach. And on paper that might look good to a VC or an investor that they're focusing on a particular segment of the security industry. But more and more, exactly as you were saying, organizations are really looking to how do I have a more complete end-to-end view of my workloads and manage the security associated with them, and trying to take a whole bunch of different point tools that weren't really designed to work together,
right,
and integrating them and going out and hiring security analysts to be able to monitor and leverage them is a really challenging proposition for most organizations out there. I was just looking at the annual shareholder letter from JP Chase earlier this week, and Jamie Dimon, the CEO, said that they spend $600 million annually on cybersecurity, 3,000 employees on cybersecurity.
Wow.
Now, not every organization is the size of JP Chase, but if you're a, let's say, $100 million company or a $50 million company, or you're a startup that's building on top of AWS, how are you really going to be effective in building your business and managing security at the same time by going out and buying a bunch of point tools, integrating them together, hiring a bunch of analysts? It's a real challenge.
Yeah, certainly for a large portion of the market, I think that's accurate. So Matt, I wanted to pick up on one of the words you just used there, and it's the word build. Amazon Web Services have advertised Reinforce as created by builders for builders. However, we've often seen security professionals within an organization often be viewed as the anti-builders. They tend to get in the way of transformation or innovation, or at least it's perceived that way. So how do you see AWS Reinforce helping to break some of that perception?
Yeah, so I think AWS is very strong on the sense of community and sense of collaboration, and AWS is also very transparent about what they do. The shared security model, I think, is very effective in being able to communicate to builders and IT practitioners. These are the security capabilities that AWS take on, and then here are the capabilities that you have a responsibility for. And with some of the services that they offer, like Spectre and Guard Duty and the AWS Security Hub and the ability to aggregate the security data, clearly shows that AWS cares about security. They care about providing a certain level of capability to their customers, but then they also have the partner ecosystem and partners like Alert Logic that can come in and add complementary value on top of that to further support their customers in having confidence to run their businesses in the cloud on AWS.
Yeah, it makes good sense. And I guess you can kind of look at it two ways, right? There's kind of builders within the security organization within a business. And to the point you raised earlier, the industry as a whole is struggling to kind of fill the gap in terms of skills, right? So the other way you could maybe look at it is in order for an organization to continue to build, they might need to look to get some support in that area so they can focus on those transformation and innovation projects that they're putting in the hands of their builders without having to go and fill that security skills gap. And that's where organizations like Alert Logic comes in, right?
Right, exactly. We have some very interesting different types of customers that run their businesses in AWS. We have everyone from startups to much larger enterprise organizations, and they have different needs and they have different requirements, right? So the startups are very focused on their business and getting their business up and running, right? So it's almost like they don't want to have to worry about security, even
Seen
though
that firsthand.
Right, even though they know they have to worry about it. So they're really looking for a partner who can help to be that extension of their team, so they can focus their core resources and their burn rate on building their application or building their business, and trusting in AWS for the capabilities that AWS provides, but then working with a partner like Alert Logic to go beyond that and providing additional capabilities. And then for the larger enterprises that they're looking to try and leverage the scale, the performance, the cost efficiencies of the cloud, how do they take their applications and how do they take their workloads into an AWS environment, and recognizing the shared security model, and also recognizing that in many cases they have resource constraints as well. They don't necessarily have as many security analysts or any security analysts. In fact, there's a data point from the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics that there's 350,000 unfilled security analyst jobs right now.
That's amazing.
And another firm, Cybersecurity Ventures, has actually predicted that by 2021, so just 2 years from now, that's going to grow by tenfold.
Wow.
So if you're an enterprise that's located outside of a large major metropolitan area, or even if you are in a major metropolitan area, how are you going to go out and hire the security analysts that you need in order to effectively monitor and protect your environment? How are you going to retain them? This is a real practical challenge, and so I think there's going to be a lot of discussion around that at the Reinforce event. There was a lot of discussion around that at RSA as well. Just how are we going to deal with the skills shortage gap? And security isn't a 9-to-5 thing.
Yeah,
right?
That's very true.
It's a 24/7, 365 operation. So, you may be successful in hiring, an analyst or two and such, but, can you really make them work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? That's a real gap that a lot of organizations are struggling with. How do they address?
Yeah, good point. Another way you could kind of approach the builder piece is looking at security as an enabler, right? So rather than it being, as it has been often viewed in the past, as kind of an insurance policy or a cost center or some kind of negative connotation associated with security and security professionals. Finding a way for security to really become aligned with the goals of the business and to really become a central part of those innovation projects, those projects that lead to revenue growth. I think that would be an interesting piece to kind of see how that develops at the conference and beyond.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're going to start seeing security being used as a differentiator, actually, by businesses, cloud native businesses, but also more traditional business as well. I think of the ad campaign that Apple's running right now, for example, right, where they're clearly focusing on privacy as a major differentiator against their competitors. I think we're going to start to see more of that, where businesses are going to say, we've got our security act down, and you can trust your data in us. Good example, one of our joint customers is a company called Club Corp. They operate 200 different country clubs, golf courses around the world. They've got pretty high-end clientele. So the data that's in their systems that they're running in AWS is pretty important, that they need to keep that secure because of the nature of their particular clientele. So they've really found a strong marriage in AWS and Alert Logic to be able to provide them with the security and the peace of mind that they need to protect their customers, their clients' data.
Yeah, that's a great example. Another one that I've seen very often is in the SaaS industry. Organizations that are providing software as a service, more often than not, they're now inheriting the security requirements of their customers. So if they're starting to go into markets like healthcare or finance or some of the more mature, let's say, industries from a security perspective, they're suddenly finding themselves going from startup to having to grow up very, very fast and mature their security capabilities. And I think we'll see a lot of good discussion around that too at the conference.
I agree. A good example of one of our current customers is Prefi. So they provide a service to banks and financial institutions to be able to verify prospective clients in terms of their credit worthiness and credit score and things like that, and whether or not they would be a good potential client for those banks and financial institutions, so that they don't have to have that capability in-house. They're a startup company, but yet they've got to meet PCI requirements. They got to meet SOC 2 requirements because the credit agencies that they partner with require them to be able to do that, right? So they picked AWS because they felt that that was going to be the most secure cloud environment, and then they picked Alert Logic to really be the extension of their business in order to be able to provide the security team to be able to do the 24/7 monitoring of their environment.
Yeah, it only takes one customer to completely kind of change your responsibilities in that type of situation, right? I wanted to pick up again on the theme of disruption and kind of going against the status quo. Alert Logic has in recent times really kind of come out with some very strong messaging around how we have a different approach than a lot of the industry has kind of been comfortable with for some time. So kind of coupling that with the expected positive disruption we're expecting to see from AWS at Inforce, what can we expect from Alert Logic at the show?
Yeah, so one of the things that we share in common with AWS is customer obsession is at the core of our company values. So our updated positioning and packaging of our offering has really been grounded in meeting the needs of customers and better responding to those needs. I sometimes like to equate the security market to a bowl of acronym soup. It's like the alphabet soup that you had when you were a kid, right? You've got all these different acronyms and all these different tools, and the market's been very thin sliced into all these discrete sets of capabilities, and it's made it very challenging for organizations to come up with a comprehensive security approach, especially if you are a mid-sized organization that has limited resources, and you're not the JP Morgan Chase with hundreds of millions of dollars to invest in security every year, right? And so what we believe is that organizations need to have a comprehensive coverage of their attack surface, right? They got to cover everything from the application layer all the way down, to the network layer, the traditional, 7 layers of the OSI model, right? And so the idea of being able to go out there and curate your own security approach from a bowl of acronym soup is not practical. It's expensive. It's time consuming. You got to hire people to and maintain staff that can integrate these disparate tool sets together, and then you've got to be able to have people that are monitoring it. I've seen statistics that I think it's as low as 4% of alerts are actually reviewed by organizations. And I've talked to auditors who've said if you're collecting log data and you're not even looking at the log data, that's worse than collecting log data, because the auditors expect that if you're collecting it, that you're actually doing something with it. So, what we're really seeing in our customers is this need to have a much more comprehensive view of their attack surface, but to be able to do that much more efficiently. So what Alert Logic has done is we've curated our set of security technologies. We've married them with AWS's security capabilities. And then our threat researchers have developed the appropriate security content in order to be able to use machine learning to be able to recognize when we're seeing things, and then they pop that over as a high or critical incident to our security operations center. And then they're able to actually dig deeper, verify what's going on, and then they pick up the phone and they actually call the customer within 15 minutes. That's kind of a novelty in this day and age, right? Actually
have an actual conversation with somebody about the problem.
Especially at 3 o'clock in the morning. Maybe you don't want to get that phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning, but it's a lot better to get at 3 o'clock in the morning than 9 o'clock in the morning, where you would have had 6 hours to actually start doing something about it. So we call this seamless threat management, or seamless threat management. This idea of bringing together a platform of curated security technologies, threat intelligence from expert threat researchers, and then the experts that are in our 24/7 security operations centers. And really seamlessly bringing those three capabilities together provides that coverage of the attack surface at a much more efficient way than what an organization would be able to do on their own.
Yeah, and you're taking away that need for the customer to kind of wade through that acronym soup at that point, right? And focusing on the outcome, as opposed to those difficult decisions that are often also swayed by lots of different vendors' opinions. And back to the point we were raising about the kind of current state of the security conference industry, right? It's kind of almost who shouts loudest at some points, right? So one other thing I wanted to touch on, you talked about collaboration at a technology level between Alert Logic and AWS. So in particular, Security Hub is a technology that AWS have brought to the market in recent times that is designed to help organizations really kind of pull together all the different sources of security information that matter to them as a business. Can you talk a little bit about our integration there and how you see that evolving, and particularly highlighting how we're using our human-powered experts to enrich that data set?
Yeah, so we're super excited about what AWS has been doing with Security Hub, and we believe that every AWS customer should be leveraging it. It's a very well-designed capability to start aggregating and bringing together all the different security services data, and to be able to use machine learning type capabilities in order to produce insights, to be able to identify the proverbial needle in the haystack.
The needle in the stack of needles.
Yeah, exactly. Or the needle in the stack of needles, right? Exactly. But we often find also that the human touch is still very important, right? There is no replacement today yet for that expert security analyst, right? Someone who's been doing this for a number of years and who knows how to interpret those needles and whether or not those needles are really meaningful or not. So where we partner with the AWS Security Hub is being able to take those insights and being able to also marry that with other data that we may be collecting, and then to leverage the power of the Security Operations Center analyst, right? To be able to then dig deeper into those insights and correlating that with the data that we're capturing, and then, as we were saying before, actually pick up the phone and call the customer if they found something, right? We'd send emails too, but there's no substitute for having that phone conversation.
Yeah, you can't automate the human touch, right? And especially in a high stress situation like a breach, right? You're almost in a situation, it might be the first time customers ever experienced anything like that. Just having a calming voice on the end of the phone that understands what they're going through and can help kind of guide them through the process.
Right, knowing there's an expert that's watching over their environment, who's there almost like their personal trainer, right? Their coach who's
got your back, spotting them as they're
helping
working
them
their way
the
through it.
Right, that's exactly right. And then being able to use that as a learning experience, right? To be able to say, okay, you had open S3 buckets. Probably not a good idea, right? And being able to provide guidance to be able to help organizations be able to harden their environments as well.
Yeah, and one other point around Security Hub and back to the theme of collaboration within the industry. At least from what I understand, Security Hub's taken away some of the need for those very complex integrations between multiple point products that you talked about, right? Kind of giving you that central repository for that data. So I see that as AWS bringing some leadership to solve that problem, right, and solve that challenge by giving a kind of single platform and a single way for those technologies to integrate and collaborate to solve the customer's challenges.
Exactly. So it reduces a lot of the administrative burden that organizations would have had to have taken on previously.
Yeah, get to the root of the issue faster.
Yeah.
So Matt, it's very interesting for me as somebody that's been with Alert Logic for some time to see the evolution of the cloud security market, right? And as Alert Logic's been defending AWS customers specifically since 2011, we've got some real expertise there to share. So great to see that we're now going to have the platform to do that. A dedicated conference just for security, just for customers that are on AWS. So any thoughts you wanted to share on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. You made a great point that we've been defending AWS customers since 2011. We've actually been defending organizations since 2002.
There you go.
So we're not new to the security market, but unlike a lot of other security companies that are trying to take a legacy offering and try and sort of square peg it into the cloud environment, we actually re-architected our offering specifically for the cloud.
Yeah.
So we're able to take advantage of native cloud facilities that AWS provides that accelerates time to deployment, it accelerates and minimizes ongoing overhead and administrative, and just enables us to be much more tightly coupled in with the way that the AWS environment works, rather than just sort of treating AWS as some generic compute environment.
Yeah, and I think, again, back to the point on customer obsession, so much of that has really come from us being hands-on with AWS's customers and really understanding their challenges. And quite frankly, as those challenges have evolved, right? I mean, going back to 2011, it was a very different use case you'd typically see for somebody going to AWS. And it was very early. There were a fraction of the services that we see now. Obviously we see AWS innovate at a pace that really no other business has ever kind of kept up with. New features coming all the time, new products, new services. So I think it's going to be very interesting to share our experiences with A, keeping pace with that, but B, really letting the customer's voice guide where you need to head from a product development direction. Which again, if there was a criticism of the industry as a whole, it's been that they've tended to kind of believe their own hype a little bit and tend to guide customers based on the capabilities that their products have, rather than maybe kind of listening to what the customer really needs. So on our next episode, we'll be joined by Amazon Web Services, who will be here to talk to us about AWS Reinforce, what we can expect from them at the show, and how they're planning to help the security industry with some of the challenges we spoke about today. Thank you for joining us for episode 1 of The Road to AWS Reinforce. We hope you enjoyed the content, and we look forward to welcoming you at our next episode.